What's up, everybody? Welcome to Unraveling with Rain. I'm Rain, and today we're going to be talking about oneness versus the 1%. Shattering Illusions, Seeding Freedom by Vandana Shiva. I wanted to start first with a brief overview of this book, just to give you some context. Widespread poverty and malnutrition, an alarming refugee crisis, social unrest and economic polarization have become our lived reality as the top 1% of the world's 7 billion plus population pushes the planet and its people to the social and economical brink. In Oneness versus the 1%, Vandana Shiva takes on the billionaires club of Gates, Buffett, and Zuckerberg, as well as other modern empires, whose blindness to the rights of people and to the destructive impact of their construct of linear progress have wreaked havoc across the world. Their singular-minded pursuit of profit has undemocratically enforced uniformity and monocultures, division and separation, monopolies and external control over finance, food, energy, information, healthcare, and even relationships. Basing her analysis on explosive little-known facts, Shiva exposes the 1%'s model of philanthrocapitalism, which is about deploying unaccountable money to bypass democratic structures, derail diversity, and impose totalitarian ideas based on one science, one agriculture, and one history. She calls for the resurgence of real knowledge, real intelligence, real wealth, real work, and real well-being, so that people can reclaim their rights to live free, think free, breathe free, eat free. Now, although this body of work covers a lot of ground, the topic of seed ownership, breeding, and distribution struck me the most. I'm an avid gardener, and securing a healthy, sustainable source of food for myself and my family is what led me down that path. The security starts with the seeds. In the excerpt of the book I'll be playing for you later, you'll see how that security is being threatened. Now, as my gardening journey progressed, I grew to love the process of breeding seeds. That's a painstaking, time-consuming process that can take several years or even over generations to achieve the desired attributes of a particular plant. Unfortunately, you'll also learn in this excerpt those with financial and economic power are monopolizing farmers' hard work in breeding seeds over years.
Gates and his expanding patent empire. Biopiracy of climate resilience in farmers' varieties. While talking innovation, Gates has engaged in piracy, from software to seeds. At the Expo Milano 2015, I was invited to make the keynote address. In a panel following my address, a representative of the Gates Foundation talked of how it was financing the innovation and invention of climate-resilient crops through new technologies. When I asked him which farmers' varieties they were using, he was silent. Climate resilience is a complex trait and cannot be engineered through the crude tools of transferring single gene traits from one organism to another. What corporations and the Gates Foundation are doing is taking farmers' varieties with known climate-resilient traits from public gene banks, mapping their genome, and taking out patents on the basis of guesswork and speculation about which part of the genome contributes to the known trait. Along coastal areas in India, farmers have evolved flood-tolerant and salt-tolerant varieties of rice. Crops such as millets have been evolved for drought tolerance to provide food security in water-scarce regions and during water-scarce years. Navdanya decided to save the vanishing rice diversities of Orissa. Their behaviors and responses are being recorded. This has come in handy while selecting the seeds of specific rice diversities for empowering local communities to rehabilitate agriculture in disaster areas like Erasima in Orissa after the super cyclone of 1999. The Navdanya team conducted a study in the impacted villages to facilitate agricultural recovery. We distributed 3 saline-resistant varieties of paddy, which included Bundi, Kalabanak, and Lunabakara, to farmers in the worst affected areas. A total of 100 quintals were collected from Navdanya farmers in Orissa and transported over a distance of more than 1,500 kilometers from Balasore to Nagapatnam under the Seeds of Hope program. The yield from these varieties was 3 times greater and far better than any other known high yielders. The same varieties behaved even better when cultivated in Indonesia, another 1,000 or more kilometers away in 2006, by Professor Friedhelm Gulten of Hohenheim University in Germany. Patenting life through genetic engineering is rapidly giving way to patenting life through mapping the genome. Navdanya's community seed bank in Orissa has conserved more than 800 rice varieties and multiplied and distributed salt-tolerant and flood-tolerant varieties wherever required. The innovation necessary for the evolution of these climate-resilient traits has occurred cumulatively and collectively over thousands of years. These traits and crops are a commons. However, they are being presented as the inventions of scientists who rename the flood-tolerant property in the farmer's variety, such as Dahula putia from Orissa, as sub-1A, or the submergence-tolerant gene. Using marker-assisted selection, not transgenics, researchers were able to isolate the submergence-tolerant gene, sub-1A, and then transfer it to a rice variety known as Swarna, that is grown on more than 5 million hectares in India and Bangladesh. Most rice varieties can tolerate flooding for only a few days, but researchers say that Swarna sub-1 can withstand submergence for 2 weeks without affecting yields. This is a scientifically flawed claim, based on genetic reductionism, because flood tolerance, like other climate-resilient traits such as salt tolerance and drought tolerance, are multi-genetic traits. They cannot be identified as a sub-1A gene. What marker-assisted selection does is to identify the genetic sequence that is always linked to varieties which share a trait. Such varieties are then selected for crossing conventionally with varieties like Swarna. Farmers who bred the traits did not need market-oriented selection to breed for climate resilience. This is why we need to recognize the diversity and pluralism of knowledge systems, as well as the diversity of languages to describe and name processes and organisms. The agrochemical and biotech industry is using the climate-resilient crops bred by farmers for their genome mapping, claiming the farmer-bred traits as inventions through patents. But this is not breeding, it is piracy, biopiracy. And this is how the Gates Foundation redefines the biopiracy of flood-tolerant rice from Indian farmers, an innovation funded by Gates. Corporations have taken out more than 1,500 climate-resilient patents on crops. In 2014, India's patent office rejected Monsanto's application for climate-resilient traits of cold tolerance, salt tolerance, and drought tolerance in crop varieties evolved by farmers over millennia through applying their knowledge of breeding. While the spin is that these traits are being genetically engineered, the reality is that it's biopiracy.
If you decide to pick up a copy of Oneness versus the 1%, I hope you find it just as thought-provoking as I have. If we keep the discussion around freeing seeds rolling, we can keep nature unto herself, and possibly even provide her with the rights that she deserves. Thank you for watching and listening. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe so that we can keep unraveling together.